Greetings. Welcome to TheQueenElle LLC. This is Queen Elle. Thank you so much for joining me today. So today's video is a bit different from the others that I have posted so far. Now this one is going to be an overview of a natal or birth chart. So I've talked about birth charts in previous Astrology 101 videos. I have covered the houses of the natal chart. I've covered what the sun, moon, and rising signs mean. I've talked about the planet energy, both major planets and minor or dwarf sized planets. And now I wanted to discuss what a sample natal chart is. So if you're interested in seeing more about this, stick around. We're looking at a sample natal chart. If you look to the middle of the left of this chart where you see the letters AC, that is the ascendant or rising sign for this sample natal chart. So for standard natal charts, you will see the AC or ascendant on the left in the middle of the chart. So let's just take a look. So you see all of the zodiac sign symbols around in that outer circle of the natal chart. So we see starting where the AC is, this individual's ascendant is Pisces. Now, and that's the symbol for Pisces. If you would like to know the symbols of zodiac signs, you can search online for that, and that information is easily accessible and it's free as well. So we go around the zodiac wheel. Now, Pisces is known as the 12th or the last zodiac sign in the zodiac chart. The first is Aries. So as you see, this person's ascendant is in Pisces, where that arrow is pointing. That is the degree of Pisces. Now the degree gets into the nitty-gritty as far as the strength of the energy, but essentially this person's ascendant or rising sign is Pisces. Now if we go around in a counterclockwise fashion, so that's the opposite of the way that the clock goes around, then you will see Aries is the next sign. Now also, this is the first house. So if you see where the end of that arrow is, as we get to the inner circle, you see the number 1. That represents the first house. If you have not seen my houses video on the houses of the natal charts, then I will link that above so that you can access that to learn more about what each house represents. But that is the first house. And we go counterclockwise, like I said. If you look in the zodiac sign of Aries, which is right below where that AC is, you see the line separating Pisces, then moving into Aries. Then you see that this individual's Jupiter is, and this is when the person was born, Jupiter is in the sign of Aries. Okay? And you see the numbers next to the signs as well. And the numbers represent the degrees. Okay? The numbers next to the symbols, rather. So where you see the sign for Jupiter, and then right below that, we see the sign of Chiron. Chiron's our wounded healer that I spoke about on previous videos. Chiron is also in the sign of Aries for this individual in the first house. So then we move on to the next sign, and we see that the next sign is Taurus. Now, Taurus has, as we see, several planets, big and small, in the sign of Taurus. Also, you see how the first house wraps around past Aries. So the first house for this individual, and it will vary by individual, for this individual when they were born, the first house starts in Pisces, it covers Aries, and then it ends in Taurus. Now, what that is called, those are called intercepted signs, because they are signs that run on the cusp or the beginning of different houses. So as you see, it's not apples to apples, one sign per house. Typically, you'll see some overlap there, and we can dig more into that in a later video. But for this individual, the first house wraps around past Aries and then covers the beginning part of Taurus. So as we see, Taurus is at the start of the second house, and we have the North Node, or what's also known as True Node, and that is also in the sign of Taurus. And then we have the planet Uranus or Uranus, and that is also in the second house and in the sign of Taurus. So then the second house moves onward to the next sign, which is Gemini. And then we start the third house. Okay, now we're near the bottom of the natal chart. So in the sign of Gemini, we have Mars. So this person's Mars is in Gemini. Then, as you see, right on the cusp, but actually in the fourth house, but still in Gemini, we have the moon. It looks like that crescent shape right at the bottom. So this individual's moon is in the sign of Gemini. So you can look up these planetary placements individually if you search for them online. But if you pull up your natal chart, typically when you look up your natal chart online, they will spell out all of this for you as well. But this is how, if you're looking at your chart, or a chart for someone else, you can see the placements. Okay, so the moon is in the fourth house, which is on the cusp of Gemini and moving into the sign of Cancer. But the moon is in Gemini at the beginning of the fourth house. Okay, and then we have Gemini in the fourth house, and Gemini is also in the fifth house. Okay, and we're moving along around this natal chart. So now we have also in the fifth house, but now in the sign of Leo, we have Lilith. So this person's Lilith is in the sign of Leo in the fifth house. Then we have part of fortune, which is another placement, and that is also in the fifth house in the sign of Leo. And as you see, as we move into the sixth house is also in the sign of Leo, and then moving on to the sign of Virgo. But the sixth house does not have any planets in it, and that is not anything to worry about. It just means that there were no planets located in the sixth house at the time that this individual was born. Okay, so what that would mean for today is anytime if you pull up where the planets are right now, you'll see a chart and you'll see where the planets are moving through the zodiac constellations currently. If any of them are in the sixth house, then you may not, or if you were this individual, you may not feel the energy as strongly as someone, let's say, who has multiple planets in the sixth house. Okay, so then we move on the sign of Virgo, and now we're on in the middle of the right side of this person's chart. As you see that middle of the right side of the natal chart, that VX, this is the symbol for vertex. Now the vertex, as you can see on this chart, is the direct opposite point of the AC or ascendant. The vertex is located in the western hemisphere of the chart, which is actually the right hand side, and In astrology, it's considered the descendant. So that's the opposite of the ascendant. Okay. And symbolically, the vertex is a point in our chart signaling events that happen without any doing of our own. Now, this individual's vertex is in the sign of Virgo. Okay. Then we move on to the sign of Libra, still in the 7th house. And as you see, because this point of the chart is in complete opposition to where I was talking about the 1st house, this point of the chart, the 7th house, encompasses the sign of Libra, but is also on the cusp of both the sign of Scorpio and the sign of Virgo. So those are some more of those intercepted signs that I mentioned. Okay. And as you see also in the sign of Libra, for this individual, there are no planets in that sign at the time that they were born. So moving on around to the sign of Scorpio again, and this is the 8th house, no planets here. Okay. Then we move around, and there is some symbolism when there are a cluster of planets in one quadrant of a person's chart or one hemisphere of a person's chart. So we see a lot of activity on the left-hand side, which is actually the eastern hemisphere of this person's chart versus the western hemisphere or the right-hand side. So east and west is not as literal as when you're looking at a map and you see northeast, south, and the west is on the left, because the ascendant or rising sign is actually when the sun was on the eastern horizon. Okay, so you just have to change your perspective. Now, we move around the 8th house into the 9th house, and you can also see, like I said at the beginning, that the houses are not symmetrical. That's not how this works. Okay, so now we have the 9th house. For this individual, again, no planets. Now we're at the top of this person's chart, where you see that arrow pointing to the very top. That MC represents this person's midheaven, and it's the top point of the chart. And now we're in the sign of Sagittarius. Okay, then we move into the 10th house, and the 10th house for this individual is the sign of Capricorn. And we also see that this person's Mercury is right on the cusp, but within the 10th house in the sign of Capricorn. Moving on around, now we're in the 11th house, which crosses between the signs of Capricorn and Aquarius. And we see that this person's Pluto is in the 11th house, and it's on the cusp, but in the sign of Capricorn. Then we are still in the 11th house, but now in the sign of Aquarius, and that circle you see with the dot in the middle, that is the sun. So this individual's sun sign is Aquarius. Okay, close, but not technically considered on the cusp because it's not the first few degrees, but pretty close. Okay, but on the cusp of the houses rather, not the sign. So sun sign of Aquarius. Now we move into the 12th or last house, and that is the signs of Aquarius moving into Pisces. This individual's Saturn is in the sign of Aquarius, and this person's Venus is in the sign of Pisces. Okay, and then that last symbol that you see right above the arrow for pointing toward the ascendant, it's in the sign of Pisces, and it's the sign for Neptune. So this individual's Neptune is right on the cusp of the 12th house and the 1st house, but it's in the sign of Pisces. Okay, so all of those lines that you see and the angles in the inner circle, all of those lines and angles represent aspects. They represent aspects and interactions between the planets and the symbols, and they mean something. They mean something now. They mean something at the time you're born as well. So that is how you would read your birth or natal chart. I hope that this has been helpful. Thank you so much for joining today. Ashe. Peace.